Pink Cloud Radio 66. And, of this whole matter, and place, and time. And Death King is back in this whole thing. But there is no other recognizable element. I'm here to gain your trust. Or not. I guess that's really how it always goes. Because a lot of times people base their trust of somebody or anybody off of what happened before, what's done before. I don't, personally. But I think that's because I wouldn't regulate or register like people on a scale of what happened to me. It's my fault if it happened to me. But I mean, it's not my fault too, so I can't really blame anybody else for not wanting to trust me or not me wanting to trust them. That's why I do, whether it's an act of kindness or being, too nice or being taken advantage of for being too nice, whatever you want to call it, because you still can't change who you are, no matter if you're taken advantage of for it from other people. Those people always take advantage, and in fact, that's why it can end pretty easily. Because if you burn the bridge of someone taking advantage of you, they may say, "Oh, I hate you. You're not being a good friend." But at the same time, it's the best thing you can do, because you can't stick around, and it's hard. It's hard. It's the hardest path to take. It's not the easiest, because you've already shown what those other people are going to say about you. How they end it is how they spend it, meaning that they're going to spend the rest of their days thinking that way about you. Well, let them, because they thought something else about you and they didn't want to take you seriously. Because usually if you're looking at something somebody does and you take it as a good thing, but you don't look at it because it's not happening enough anywhere else, and except from that person only, then you're not really being responsible or being kind to that person by only looking at it so much and saying that, well, it's not happening with every other person, it's only happening with this person being nice to me. Well, be acceptable of that, Yes, nobody else is like that, but guess what? It doesn't mean you can't respect it. Just because no one else does that doesn't mean you can't have some kind of encouraging value of it. You obviously don't value it enough, or you haven't experienced something enough to value it. That's where a lot of people say experience is important. Yes, it's true, but you don't need much experience to value something. You can actually value something at the least of its generosity. That's, to me, how I am. I'm only talking about this before I talk about the subjects because it's important. I remember I was talking to a friend earlier last week about at work. I think it was just after work, and I was talking to someone about it, saying that with appreciation, I appreciate things if nobody else does. That's fine. If I'm the only one appreciating something, that's great. Because that's an easy thing to do. It's just like taking advantage of somebody. That's an easy thing to do. But it's also very easy to do the opposite. It's just, if not many people are doing it, it's hard to want to. It's like, not many people are doing this. It's not even for the fact that no one else is doing it. It's more that, well, what's the point if no one else is going to recognize it because they haven't done it themselves? That's the thing about these things. If you want to be original, you're going to be laughed off the planet, It's the old thing of making fun of people who, you're so pretentious for trying to do something original, You're so pretentious for doing that. Like, everybody could label that stuff. Anybody could label it. Anybody could put it in a place and say, "Oh, you're so pretentious, Marcello, because you're trying to be original." No, I'm not. I'm not being original at all. That's the whole point. The only way I can be original is by, well, there's nothing I could do. It's too late. So many people have done other things that they're appreciated for it. Look at all the writers of so many books that are, classics now. They've done their part. They've made their image. And guess what? Who can make an image now? Harry Potter? Twilight series? The same kind of things that happened before, technically, if you look at it. Not so much the Harry Potter thing, but on the end, you could probably find a lot of stuff in that kind of field. Especially in those kind of modes of writing. You can find the same things everywhere. That's why a lot of times a lot more darker stories, a lot more darker atmospheres are more appreciated. Because people can handle that kind of horror. They can't look at the real life and look into the real horror beast and see the truth, because they don't want to. They don't want to deal with that honesty. They'd rather deal with, treating people like shit, being sarcastic and cynical, because they could deal with that. They can't deal with, true honest, being truly honest with people and stuff like that, because once you are, you can't step back from that. That's the thing. With lies, you could step in any direction you want. So that's why people love lies, because they can go anywhere they want. They could crush anything they want, they could keep anything they want. With truth, you can't do anything else. That's, I think, in a lot of ways, that's why you can create things with goodness and truth. It's harder because no one else wants to do it. That's the only difference. That's why there's so many people who do contradictions. I mean, I'm sure I've done contradictions too. If you listen to Every Pink Cloud and you've heard some contradictions, let me know. Because I want to know my contradictions. I want to know where it's based from. I want to know where I'm based from and what I'm based from. Because, it's like saying... like I was saying about that friend, which was actually Rena's mom. I talked to her and her son and her brother of Rena's as well, younger brother. And I was talking about how where the mom said, "Oh, it's probably better to be single." And I said, well, I never thought it was better. I wouldn't say one is better than the other. If it happens for me, that's great. If it doesn't, if I'm single, that's great. If I get married, that's great. But I can't look at one and say it's better than the other. Like, why would I want to do that? I think that's where a lot of times I think differently, is that I don't look at something better than the other. And I think maybe that's the problem too, because a lot of people want to be, put in a high pedestal or thought of in a high way. Well, I would, but what would I get for it? It's not that I don't get anything out of it. Yes, I do. And there's a total life in that. But I think a lot of times what would occur is that people would try to put in place what you think and try to put you in a place where you can think, what you can think about. And because of that, because of how somebody would approach that even, that it's really hard to want to be close or significantly put in a better place. I think that's where, for me personally, where I kind of think about life and everything, is that where I am right now is important to me. It's not going to be important to anybody else. And it also means that it's going to be harder for me to get something else out of life. Because if nobody else wants something out of life, why would I? It's like not knowing what you want, for me, it's not about that. I know what I want. I just know that nobody else wants it. So, that's where I know that's a loneliness that I can't drive away from. That's the loneliness that I wouldn't even say, hey, I get lonely. I wouldn't even say that, because that's a big joke. Why would I bring up or spring up any sort of emotional understanding with it when I wouldn't even know if it's loneliness. Because is it loneliness? Or do I know? It's kind of hard to say that when I don't even know for sure what exactly it is. I just don't know where I would place myself outside of this, Like when people say, oh, just contact people, just say hi to them, initiate something. No, can't. There's nothing to say. Even hi, I don't know what to say. I literally don't know what to say. So if people try to bring up that you can't bring up certain things, this is what you can't talk about, and I've heard that from family members and from other people. It's just, no thanks, To me, that's where I'm like, no thanks. Either you accept that I have a viewpoint and it's going to be mine. It's not severed from yours, and I'm not going to hide anything from other people around. They're going to hear. Let's say, for example, on the phone with somebody that, let's say I'm on the phone with somebody and they're getting mad at me saying somebody's taking advantage of you, stuff like that. Let's just say there's a total conversation breakdown and I'm with somebody else at the moment. Would I oh, hold on, I got to tell you that I'm with this person? No, I wouldn't. Because you have to live with what you're doing too. That's the one thing that people don't get. They love spreading that sort of, thoughts they have. But once they're put around another material, put around another place, and shown more around, right there and then, that's the failure. They don't like that. Yet they're okay with stemming how they feel and expressing it in the way. Well then, you should be able to express it 100%. In any distinction, you shouldn't be able to run away from it. Because you're able to say it to me, Am I going to stop from doing something else with it? No. Does that mean that I feel the same way as you? Not even close. But I do think that's what people would assume, especially if they're self-depreciating. If they put themselves down, they'll definitely fall for the organic, physical realm of what somebody can say. Like let's say someone says, "Oh, that girl's a prostitute," something like that, when they're not. It doesn't mean that I believe that. It means that basically that person believes they're a prostitute. Okay, that's fine. Let them. To me, I love letting people live in their misery, because if they feel that way, they always will, and they always have. They've never felt any other way. So that's the one thing, like for me personally, that I've gotten out of life, is that you can't change that about people. Let them live in their misery. Unless you truly want to find something like they did, I wouldn't even try to, treat them like you need to be treated. Like a lot of times that doesn't work. The best thing to do is just see what they are for who they are. If they've always felt that way, then technically they'll always feel that way about anybody. They'll be nobody unless they're exactly like them, or able to just, be taken advantage of only for their purposes. Will they ever see it differently? See, that's the thing about, it's so funny when I hear people say, especially, I can bring up Mamina, for example, who says, don't like people take advantage of you, and then ultimately saying that person's taking advantage of you to anybody except for herself when she takes advantage. Now, if you listen to her and you believe everything, or it's the same thing with anybody, any family member out there. I bet a lot of you have parents out there. And maybe sometimes your parents say, "Oh, well, do this." And if you do it their way, they'll never say they're taking advantage of you. But right there and then they love it, because you're listening to their ways. They're taking advantage of you to a huge point of decree that you have to be exactly like they are. Think the same way they are. Express and experience the same way they have. Meaning that their experiences will be validated onto you. Stamp of approval. The notary public, so to speak. That comes in, stamps it, and says, "This is good." But at a certain point, those parents have to learn the lesson too. Because that's not somebody who truly cares about who you are as a person, individual. If you're truly cared for as an individual, you wouldn't be asked to be like them. You wouldn't be taken advantage of to be like your parent. You would actually be treated as an individual, and you wouldn't be treated like shit. That's all I gotta say about that one. But that's how I personally feel about it, and I know a lot of people probably feel that same way too, that have experienced the other side of it, where you're taken advantage of, and you know it, but you can't say anything because this bitch is a bitch. It's true. And it doesn't change because of those kind of, it's the same thing with governments and people in power. Everything stems from the family relationship, really. The relationship you have with two people. Whether you're a child or an adult, it doesn't matter. You could experience those same things, and by a certain point you will. Because you will understand it that way, and you'll say, "Oh shit. This is the same thing, that's why there's so much corruption. There's corruption right here in the family." Because they don't see it as bad what they're doing to somebody, just like the U.S. government. And you have the same thing with the other side of the story. They can notice it, but, "Oh no, they're the bad guys right there," because they notice all the evil that we've done. And they're trying to point it out to you guys. No, don't believe them. And if on the other end you got Iran, which are paying terrorist groups, but at the same time we're paying terrorist groups too. So that's why we're attacking Iran, because they're trying to get into our business. They're trying to be the two-sided shark that we are. There's no tail end, which means that we're just two ravenous shark bites on each side, up and down too, probably. And at a certain point, that's what's happening, is that either you become the shark or you die. And I think that's what really is the problem, though, is that all we see is war and peace. We don't see anything else. We don't try to see anything else. We don't try to forget about all the rest that we already have. The reason why we have war and peace as the only mental state is because we don't see past what we already have. That's the problem. You can only look at the past so much. You should never look at the future unless it's supposed to be about changing the present and considering the present. That's it. Because that's the only way you can change the future, is if you consider actually what's happening in the present. To you. Not to everybody else. To you. And once you start noticing that, that's when you should notice, hey, what's happening to everybody else that's, similar. And then you find out what's happening to everybody else similar. And then you see and you're like, oh shit, all this is happening to everybody at once. Which means that that's the important thing. It's never about what events are happening, what terrorists are happening, so on and so forth, which can be brought up again and again. Those kind of things, as Russell Brand brought up, is the whole thing, is our system. Russell Peters, or Russell Brand, was it? Well, whichever it was, he brought up that same thing and said they're just a propaganda tool, the media. Just a propaganda tool, spread their fear, spread their propaganda. It's true. There's no other decisive coin to it, It's a two-headed same story. That's it. Heads or tails, it's the same story. If you own both sides, you don't have no problems. Except the problems that you want to create. There you go. That's all you need to do. And I think that's where I get into what's been happening these past few years in this whole thing. Because the money is not there. Getting into race, gender, appearance in general, sexual orientation, all revolve around in public to make money. You fight for those freedoms and forget about the individual underneath all those, which has no freedom, technically. Which is no freedom. Because if you're thinking about around in public to make money, and that's the only reason you're fighting to get race, gender, appearance, freedoms that are very, general topics like sexual orientation, stuff like that. If that's what you're trying to get a freedom for, you already got it. You need other people to recognize it. If you need other people to recognize your freedoms, then you don't have freedom. Because you're waiting for other people to authorize it. You need other people to authorize your freedom? Really? I mean, if you truly have freedom, you don't have to ask for it. You don't have to ask for it in general. Because, that's the thing that will be wasted. Because then you'll be manipulated and controlled at a very high level. Just because you're represented for it doesn't mean you truly are free. In fact, if you're represented for it, that's why you're not free. Because if other people have to represent you for you to be free, then you're not really an individual. You're waiting for somebody else to create that individual. Obviously, you don't have a complete character and you don't own yourself. You don't have your self-ownership, your individuality inside you already. You need somebody else to do it for you. That's where, that's where what I can see by what's been said in the past about if you give up your freedoms for a little more security, you don't deserve either. Well, of course you don't. And you won't have either, because you'll never feel secure. You already lost your security once you ask for more security. You don't feel secure with yourself if you're going to ask somebody else for it. I mean, you're not. It's the same thing with freedoms, You've lost those freedoms by not being secure with yourself. If you're secure with yourself, you have your freedom. There's nothing else you need. That's why we don't have freedom, really. Because there's so many people that are insecure. And I'm not talking about being insecure in certain ways. Being nervous, being shy. Those aren't signs of being insecure. Real insecurity is when you ask somebody else to fix it for you. Is when you ask somebody else to do something about it. That's where, with what we think democracy is, where the majority rules, technically, you would have to get 100% of people to agree in our system, because it's more where if it's not 100%, they go back to the drawing board again. So technically, everybody has to be represented for it. If not, they don't do it. That's why it's so easy in a democracy to manipulate and control the population in that way, because all you need is the same thing all democracies needed: people to fail. People to fail themselves in a system that they could create for themselves. And, and do for themselves, But if you're not secure, if you're not an individual about it, and if all you think about is a group, if all you think about is groupthink, which is what most people do think, and that's the main issue. Because if you're not looking at this as an individual before you step into the realm of a group, then technically, that's why democracies haven't worked ever, because they always end up being based on the majority, the group, But you could easily get people to agree to a group mentality. There are so many things that have gone away because of group mentalities in our system. Different science methods, different scientific theories and actions that have gone into place. A lot of times lies were put into the picture to show that their science was wrong. So basically, you don't even need to tell the truth to get rid of something else. Say, oh no, we're not going to use that because they lied. But they didn't lie. It's you who are lying. But if you're in the majority, you're able to lie because who's going to believe that you're lying? You're in the majority, That's the thing about having a majority rule, is that anybody can lie in the majority and be trusted. Well, they're in the majority. Why would they lie to us? Oh, yes, of course. Because nobody in the majority ever lied to us, right? Literally, you can look back in history, look at how Hitler was voted in. Majority rule, he was voted in a democracy too. Same thing with Russia, which is so-called communism, which is not. It's another very illicit form of capitalism that was very bought up and very controlled. It wasn't communism at all. But we like labeling things in certain ways because we want only them to look bad. See, because if Russia was communism, why didn't Cuba go through the same things that Russia did? Because they're not. That's why. It's very easy to look at it that way and say it is, but it's a far more fetched closer to what capitalism is, than especially the way our capitalism works now. We're not really a capitalist system in that form, in the form of what we say capitalism is versus what it really is. And I think, dog eat dog, anything you want to bring up that's fierce is exactly what represents us. But I think that's what really is a toleration where people can accept that, because at least they're able to have the race, gender, appearance in general, sexual orientation, right there and then. They'll fight for those freedoms and forget about the individual under all those freedoms, under all those created ideas. Because if you need to create an idea and then subject it to the big term of the world and say, we need to get this accepted, why? If people want to live in their misery, let them. That's the thing about what I've never understood about all this stuff. Especially about, our society in general. That many people try to develop their ideas based on certain aspirations. Apparitions is ghost, but that's where... that's what matters to them. Because, like I said, because the money is not there. You don't need the money to be there. If you needed the money to be there, then that's all you needed. You don't need to worry about getting your rights. You don't need to worry about race or gender or appearance or sexual orientation. You don't need to worry about that. You just need the money to be there. That's where a lot of people won't admit what they truly want. Hey, I want protection from the government. No, what I really want is just free money. Then forget about money. That's the best way to be unlimited. Don't believe there's power in something that there isn't. We create the power above us and around us by saying it's there. By admitting defeat and saying we have to use it. We have to use this system. Well, it's a choice at that point, and you choose to let that system rule you. At the end of the day, that's why many systems have failed. Democracy the most. It's been the most failed system ever. Failed more times than any other system. Because all the systems were just toppled. That's it. They didn't last. We didn't give them opportunity to see how far they could go. But then again, at the same time, people would say, oh, well, it's because they were doing bad things. As if we weren't. As if we weren't friends with those bad things. We were exactly the friends, the compatriots that made sense with those groups and just entangled ourselves in a web. And said, we'll help you out, of course. We want to make ourselves look good, but we'll work with you too, don't worry. We'll help you out to get your image out there too, of course. I think that's the thing about, being a bad guy. You don't need to actually win. The biggest thing a bad guy wants is to get an image out there. And that's where you look at a lot of the things that have happened. Certain ones They were just setups. And they did a bad job of it because those people didn't admit to it. Most people who actually do something truly bad would, shatter all over the news. They'll shatter all over the papers. They'll do everything they can to get it out there beforehand. Hugely beforehand. Red Brigades did it for a long time before anything happened. And that was in Italy, Over here, there have been people who have come out beforehand. Not so much early on, but there was points where you have something that's a danger. And maybe some more stuff happened than what was said. And that's where the action took place, and a lot of people could say, well, that person's just crazy for doing that. But maybe there was something that happened. Maybe it wasn't just as easy as, oh, he just went crazy. Or she just went crazy or something. It may be that easy to say it, but unless you truly were in the situation, maybe something happened. Maybe there was something more to it that wasn't even talked about. And wouldn't be talked about because, secrets and everything, NSA, everything that's happened, well, we'll accept that. We'll accept people watching us that much. Okay. Then the scrutiny of it too. You obviously know the end degree of what can happen. And I think that's where a lot of the steps take place. And I think that's what I meant by, everything revolves around that stuff. It's forgetting about the individual. That's all you need to do. Forget about the individual right there. Because, what matters more? Because the money is not there. You accept that answer too. Yet at the same time, you fight for race and gender and appearance and sexual orientation. But if the money's not there, you're okay with that? Okay, then have a good life, Then truly, honestly, you shouldn't be bothered by the stuff that you're getting. You shouldn't be upset about what you're not getting, because if the money's not there, you'll accept it. As long as there's a reason, as long as there's something put forward beforehand, everybody accepts anything that a government or anybody says in power. They'll accept anything. That's the same thing with parents. So right there and then, once you subject and give a sort of ultimatum beforehand, it doesn't matter what a person does or a government does. They'll accept anything. We've accepted that the biggest terrorist attack that took place was actually between our government and the Native Americans here, when they put their guns down themselves and they were killed, over 300. Yet, it's okay. The biggest terrorist attack was not these school shootings. They were back then, and that wasn't that long ago. Technically, that wasn't that long ago at all. But people forgot about it because we got to assimilate and have some sort of understanding with each other. Yeah, but that doesn't prove we have an understanding with each other. The understanding is the gun to our face, someone killed in disgrace. So technically there is no understanding with each other. The understanding is the whip hand. The old story of, we have the whip hand. You keep on doing what you're doing, we'll keep on doing what we're doing. Kind of attitude, You just listen to us, and we'll keep on doing what we're doing. It's almost like you're the bad ones. You gotta be strong. You gotta be listening to us, and we'll keep on doing what we're doing. Don't worry about that. So it's almost that kind of, you change, we don't. And that's what this really means. That's why there is no freedom in that way, because you change, we don't. If he'd grown up in a different environment. I love that line. One of my favorites. Because it shows how much people don't want to look at the facts that the environment shows a lot more. It's pretty easy to kind of look at it from the consequential, it's what he believes himself that's more important. But why does he believe that? Why does she believe that? Well, because there's something else around that. And there's something else around them that has created that. And I think that's where a lot of times people try to make it seem like, it's a Muslim thing, it's stuff like that. Like, people use those kind of scapegoats to separate themselves from what has happened. When technically, there was a larger story that wasn't looked at, that was ignored. And right there and then is the setup of, saying that, if he'd grown up in a different environment, then the environment is wrong. It's not the religion, it's not where they're from, any kind of thought process. It's the environment, which means the environment here, the environment everywhere. How people think, what people do to destroy, how far they go, how willing they are to be ignorant, how willing they are to ignore things and not listen. I mean, if it's the environment, that means it's all the environments, not only one in a desert. It's everywhere. It's not going to disappear by having a war. I mean, it's a nice ideal. I don't think it's a nice ideal personally, but it's a nice ideal that you can actually think that having a war is going to change that. But it goes back to the whip hand. That's all you need. For a lot of people, that's all you need. As a parent, that's all you need. And I think that's the thing that's going to be subjected for a very long time to kids, and that sucks. Like, personally, that's why I never understood why a lot of people grew up the kids, let's say. Like, why have kids if you're going to treat them like anybody else? And I always looked at that and I said, well, it must be some kind of truth to this, that there must be some kind of perpetual motion. And I think that's what I mean by, if he had been growing up in a different environment. When I hear that, I'm like, well, but that's kind of using a certain way of thinking. Not only that, it's using a certain assimilating quality. Like, if you assimilate well, if you run the traditional barriers. But the thing is, you meet a lot of people who don't even know what anything is. So, right there and then, how can you be traditional if you don't know? That's where, like, personally, that's how I feel about it. Where I hear people talk about, like, being traditional. But at the same time, I've met more people nowadays that don't know anything about what they celebrate. Like, holiday-wise and stuff like that. So I think it's hilarious that people say, be more traditional. Well, traditional now is just being ignorant. That's what being traditional is. Well, being prejudiced, that's as traditional as you can get. There you go. You're being very traditional. So I think that's the mamma mia of me, is that I've seen it that way as the death king. It's not being afraid of love as much as I'm not being afraid of death. Right there and then, the only traditional thing I see is people being prejudiced and people not knowing anything and being ignorant. So that's as traditional as you can get right there. How these people in this world survived, I don't know. But they survived by not being honest. I've survived by being honest, and I'm surprised I have. And I think that's where a lot of this stuff really comes from. That, if you're going to be misaligned, you're wasting my time. That's what I truly see from it. Especially this kind of stuff. Like, especially when you try to look at what kind of person I am and say, this is the kind of person Marcello is. But if you're going to be misaligned, you're wasting my time. You truly are. You're not benefiting my life by, saying, hey, Marcello's this type of person. Or, like, it's the old idea, if you don't know what you want, you can't know anything about me, really. Because you don't even know what you want. I mean, you have a choice to not know what you want, that's fine, but I think a lot of times people try to use that and say, I know exactly how this person thinks. Well, okay, that's great. But you're already showing that you don't want anything to do with this. That nothing else matters except for you being 100% getting it, I must know exactly what this person's like, that's what I mean. But if you're misaligned, you couldn't know that stuff. You couldn't even know your own footsteps, Couldn't even know if you're walking or not, And I think that's the thing about, doing this stuff, or working on it. That what really happens is that people who are just like wanting everything, have perceptions fly everywhere, think they're right all the time. When really they're dumbasses. I have to say it, And I don't mean it in a bad way. If you're going to fall for anything, though, you're going to fall for everything. Yikes. Which shows, not only naivete, because I think that'd be too nice. That means they at least understand certain things. Being naive, I've been naive. But not in that way. That's not even naivete. At that point, it's like, I give up. I'm going to take on anything that will come. Because and that, in fact, shows the most loneliness right there. I think at the same time, it may be even show more lonely than when somebody who actually says they're lonely. Because somebody who says they're lonely at least admits it. You know, somebody who just acts a certain way to just get anybody to come to them, it doesn't matter how they come, in any way possible, I guess you'd say, is that's what truly happens, and that's what they want. You know, they want somebody there. But, you know, that's why, me personally, that's why I'm single too, because so many people's perceptions fly everywhere. If they're with me, how do I know they're going to stay with me? Their perceptions could fly to anybody, which means that they could allow anybody into them. Yikes. No thanks, you know. To me, it's either 0 or 1,000,000. That's what I meant by that, is that I don't fly everywhere with my perceptions to allow anybody else in that way. I joke around with everybody, and people could say that, people could feel jealous about it as much as they want. I don't care. If I was going to fall for anybody's tricks, I would have had sex already and would have had lipstick on my jacket, on my shirt, everywhere I go. But I don't let myself be taken advantage of in that way. You know? And I think that's the difference, is that it's not even being taken advantage of, it's more, am I going to just let this happen? Kind of thing. That's where it really comes from. Because a lot of people are waiting for somebody to do something to them. But that's the thing. If you're just waiting for somebody to do something to you, when are you going to stop thinking that way? You know, would you stop thinking that way if you found somebody that you truly cared about? No, you wouldn't. Like, to me, I'm in the middle of nowhere right now. That's why I'm single. And what you said earlier, you know, what I've heard earlier about, you know, being taken advantage of and stuff like that. I ain't gonna fall for that shit, you know? Just take advantage of her? Nah. It's not about that. It's not even about that opposite end of, like, taking advantage of somebody else. You know, time changes many things. It's the rock in which we were born, you know? Time is really that. It is where we were born in, or where we went through, you know, where we keep on trying to get out of the rock. But time does change many things. It's just a matter of what we want to understand from that rock. Do we want to understand something from it, or do we just want to go through it? Because that's what I see from most people. They just want to go through the rock. They don't want to understand the rock. Okay, well, just bore through it. Get out of here. You know, let me stay back here. Thank you very much. Thank you for building the tunnel for me to see more, but I'm not going to go that fast. You know, I think that's the degree of my understanding of what I want to do, is that I want to place myself in a position to create something more, even if it's not created. You know, at least I tried. You know, unlike you, at least I tried to create something here. You know, and I think I'm not trying to be a dick about it and say, oh, I'm better than anybody else for doing something more. No, I think I'm worse, but I can't change it. You know. And I think that's where the problem lies, is that, I have so much admiration and, you know, all this other jealousy and envy for this kind of stuff. I'm like, motherfucker, that's enough. That kind of stuff just makes me like, what's the point? What's the point to know you if all you're going to do is look up to me like that, when I never placed anything on you to blame or to put, you know, or to put in one place, you know. That's the difference, is that you have to be proven to yourself, but I'm not like you, so I can't prove anything to you, because I would never do anything like that to you. I can prove something else to you, but it doesn't matter, because you've never experienced that, and I have to experience something that you're experiencing. But I wouldn't do that. Sorry, you know, that's somebody. A lot of people think that's what love is where you'll give up and be like them. That's not love. That's not love at all. That's an idea of love if you want it to be, but that's not what I see as personally love. If you want to try something, deliver something more, get a nice angle toward it, that's great. But if you want to get somebody else to get your angle, and that's it, you want to forget about theirs, ain't gonna happen. You know, that's not love. If you truly can't look at somebody's angle and say, okay, because at some point they were like you. Like I meant about the virgin thing. Everybody's been a virgin. If you want to live through the path of only when you weren't a virgin, you were a kid at one point. If there was other dark and sinister things that happened that you're not talking about, then those are things you haven't gotten over. Or those are things that you keep on keeping inside of you. And that's not good either. Because you're living with things that are, that's it, a victim, you know, looking at the victim that you are. You don't need to take a place to encourage somebody to stop, you know, any kind of thing, because those kind of things are hard to stop. But at the same time, it doesn't mean you have to be the culprit for it. Like, you're not the bad one for that happening to you. But it's easy to see it that way. Very easy. A lot of people do see it that way, you know. And I think I'm a loner not by choice, because I don't share the other's pursuits of a constant need for small distractions. I got these quotes actually from these last two from the Mist trilogy of books. Love them. And I think that really last one just spoke about who I am right now. I'm a loner not by choice. It's because I don't share the other's pursuits of a constant need for small distractions. It's true. You know, it's sad because that's what most people are. Their perceptions fly everywhere. But they choose to let it fly everywhere too. Most people choose to allow themselves to, you know, fly their perceptions everywhere because they want something. It doesn't mean they want it all the time. But, you know, there's a difference between seeing a relationship inside and out. Meaning inside of it and outside of it. Meaning like if you're with that person or if you're not with that person. But if you don't want to see that, or if you want to not take it seriously, hey, that's your own fault, you know. Just like me, it's my own fault for what happened in my life. Sometimes more my fault than the other person, sometimes a good equal amount on both sides. You know, and sometimes the other person entirely, you know. But I don't blame that person because they're used to getting somebody that's like them, or somebody that's in that realm of understanding or misunderstanding. Meaning that they'll totally, you know, antagonize them. And some people want that. They want the antagonization. This person fights me, so it feels brutal, and it's what, you know, they pay attention to everything I say, and they get angry, they get upset. I like that. Some people like that, you know. You look at I Love Lucy and stuff like from the 50s and stuff, and a lot of shows and episodes were based on that alone. Were based on the Cuban temper. You know, we're based on the kind of relationship and zigzag that it goes through. But the thing is, it was created. It wasn't instantly there. And a lot of times that's what people want to see because they don't get enough in the relationship. Well, did Lucy get enough in the relationship? Probably not. Did Ricky? I guess not. I don't know. But right there and then, if you're not getting enough in the relationship, that should show you that maybe you shouldn't be with that person. If you're not getting enough from the relationship in general, those kind of other parts, the passionate parts that you grow from it, are great. And those are parts that I truly love. I'm a passion person. That's all I can tell you about me. But outside of that, I can't tell you anything else. Because there's so much more to tell you that I have to show you. Most of that stuff comes from passion too. All the music I listen to, all the books that I read, all the writing that I do, the stuffed animals that I have, everything. Everything around me. Everything within me. Everything within my past and future now. And present. You know, it's all going to be based on the same things, and that's why a lot of times people wouldn't want to spend the time. They feel discouraged because they don't have that. There we go. That's a favorite of mine. I think that's why people's perceptions fly everywhere. Or they share the pursuits of constant need for small distractions because they're not able to have a big distraction. They're not able to have that big encompassing value of commitment to something. You know, when people hear commitment from me, boring. I said that before already. Boom. But I'm saying it again because it's what really has happened. You know, there's nothing of value. You know, even somebody can lie to me and say, oh, well, you know, that's a great thing. But when I see how they kind of empty themselves of me and, you know, just sort of leave, it's like, wow, that person really appreciated me in that way of saying, like, they love how committed I am to things. But then they disappear. Well, they must really love the kind of person I am, you know, in that form. You know, but at the same time, you know, it doesn't mean every person who notices the kind of person you are or talks about it to you means they want to be with you or anything. And that, I believe, is true as well. I know that's not true. Because I know when I'm sleep deprived, oh man, do I think everybody's in love with me. But I'm joking around. I wouldn't actually say anything. To me, it's like one-sided, and I can create images of it in my head. If I want to kiss somebody, I'm kissing them in my head right now. If I want to be with somebody, I'm being with them in my head right now. There you go. You know, I don't need anything else to prove that. Because if somebody wants to be with me, you know, eventually they will. And it's not going to be like, oh, well, you know, now I can't. It's too late now. If it's too late, there was never a point that it was going to happen then. Because it would have always been too late. Or whatever you want to name it as, you know. They would have always been too late, you know? Because I don't think there is too late or too early. I think it's something that could happen and will happen, and if it doesn't happen, then it wasn't supposed to happen. Because if you have to label it a certain thing, it definitely wasn't supposed to happen. I mean, it's pretty sad that I have to be a loner, you know, especially not by choice, you know? But, like I said, I don't share the other's pursuits of a constant need for small distraction. It doesn't mean I can't do anything with those values and go out and hang out and go out and do something. I can. And I can enjoy it like hell. And not feel like I'm being, like, pushed into it. Because I don't. Because there's definite things you can see outside as much as inside. There's no, I wouldn't say there's no difference, but there shouldn't be anything that inhibits you from doing it. And I think that choice has gone away. You know, and I think, sadly, it's gone away for its own reason. And money may not be there, but I'm here still. So take care, everybody. Love.